That sounds great.
Although
so
there's not a
we're
lot
live
of
and
flying
recording.
around. Next year it'll be different. And we'll hopefully have you out and judge something. You know, I have some influence in San Francisco and a couple of others.
That would be cool.
I'd love it. I'll say this again to the crowd, but I was in Paso March 8th through 13th. It was like the last thing I did in the before times, before everything changed. So fond memories for me, for sure.
I drove through Paso on March 4th coming back from the World of Pinot Noir in Santa Barbara, and I just knew that was the last event I was going to go to. And lo and behold, it turned out to be true.
I flew over it coming back from San Diego, the great Toast to the Coast wine competition that we judged. And I waved to everyone in Paso as I flew over it, and I haven't been back since, so I can't wait for a few weeks from now. Absolutely.
That was the last airplane ride I was on, too.
Absolutely, me too. It was a very nice airplane ride. I miss it.
So, sorry everyone, just a second, but Zoom is telling me that it's still preparing to go live on the old Facebook. So give me just a second here and
I don't miss airplanes at all, actually.
Yeah. It'd be super odd now.
I don't fit well. I like being in other places, but I don't like getting there.
I've been married 35 years, and this is the first year that I haven't gone anywhere.
Crazy.
Yeah, I haven't gone anywhere.
I'm
surprised she still puts up with me.
I take it out in the yard. It's my therapy.
I really like Sarah's website and blog posting. I was familiar with it, but I had to look at a few the other day just because I knew she'd be on the on the Zoom. So nice job, well done, very well laid out, a lot of cool stuff.
I muted myself. Thank you so much. It's so sweet. I'm very visual. I like bright colors, as you guys can probably see from my surroundings and stuff. So I try to make sure that all of that reflects.
So we already have some chat going on.
Yeah, we have something to chat. Very cool.
Yeah, we have some regulars that watch, and over in Columbus, Ohio, we have Steve and Martha Hewitt, who absolutely love joining us. They've been on watching us, I think, nearly for every show. And so thank you, Steve and Martha, for joining us again. And then I see a lot of other familiar names. Paul Maynard, I see you on there again. And I see, oh, hey, Rusty's joining us today. So cool, Rusty, right on. Mike Dunn. Hey, Mike.
Mike Dunn.
Mike Dunn. Hi, Mike. Fellow judge, many competitions.
Right on. So plenty of names. All you got to do is click the chat box down below and click participants, and you'll be able to see who's joining us over on Zoom. Right now, it's still trying to send it to Facebook. I don't know what's going on. It never does this. This is one of those moments in time where you're wondering what's happening. So we have a few other people saying hello. If you see the chat box. I'm going to really quick try to see if I can't troubleshoot what's happening with the Facebook. So give me just a second here. But you guys can keep talking.
Oh, of course. So Tim, I'm very excited about the Central Coast. It's coming up. I can't wait. I'm going to book a few extra appointments while I'm down there, of course. And very excited about that. That might be a fun thing to talk about too, just its format and really what what makes it so different from all other competitions. So
well, Central Coast has been around for a little while. It's part of the Mid-State Fair, and luckily I got asked to be the chief judge a few years back. So we dialed it up a little bit and got some, shall we say, we included more writers, shall we say, which I think really added to the complexity. And then we had retailers too, like Phil Market from Safeway Albertsons and Wilfred Wong, Wine.com, and Billy Hayes. But most retailers are sequestered during OND. So the reality is that they'll join us again next year, and they love it too because it is a focus. The only wines we get are Central Coast wines. Usually it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 to 800 wines. So it's not like a gargantuan undertaking.
Right. Yeah, I think the only thing that I could compare it to would be the Harvest Challenge that we do up in Sonoma County, which is actually it's really the North Coast Wine Challenge. And it's all the North Coast appellation regions, just like Central Coast is all about the Central Coast. So it's a very interesting comparison. And, you know, they do the Northwest Challenge too, so there's a comparative there too, but Central Coast is very unique because of all its diversity, for sure.
And by the way, I love Houston, Jeff. I think their judging is one of the best ones
Absolutely
around. I was a little disappointed though that they put a ceiling on the entries this year.
Yeah, they've reduced the number of judges to a third of what it normally is. It's going to be, they're going to try to keep the same format as much as possible. But with all what we talked about earlier before we went live with the social distancing and the protocols in place. And we'll see what happens. It's because last year, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 plus wines. I think there was 125 judges, if I remember correctly. I think this year is going to be down to 50 judges. So we'll see. There just would be too many wines to go through, I imagine, is why they're eliminating.
Well, and also the venue has to be able to accommodate staff and tables and, you know, walking by and all those details. So the benefit of being at a fairgrounds, which is basically empty, you can do that very easily.
Well, they do. It's a pretty big space where they hold it. It's down at NRG, the football stadium, the convention center right next to it. So it's a huge place. But still, you're inside, you're around people, so you never, gotta take the necessary precautions.
San Francisco this year, they're going to do, I don't know, something like a lot of mini judgings. So it's not going to be in a hotel ballroom like many years past. And I'm sure Sawyer's doing some, it's going to be like a 9-day thing.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And you sign up for certain days. And so there'll only be, maybe 12 of us together at any point in time.
Yeah.
So, and there's no hotel. I mean, there's no lobby bar. There's no Foley's, no Guinness.
No.
All right, you guys, we made it. We made it onto Facebook. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but I got it to go. Did a little bit of troubleshooting there and figured some things out. I'm actually, honestly, totally amazed that I was able to do that because I was about to just drink. So we actually made it onto Facebook. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for everyone's patience over there watching us on Zoom as well as we were trying to make sure we mirrored it. And so once again, Chris Toronto with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, and thanks for coming to hang out with us again today for our Paso Wine Zoom Hangout. Today we're going to be talking about wine competitions. And probably if you've been on Zoom already, kind of got a little bit of a sense of what we're going to be talking about a little bit, but we're going to dive into that here in just a minute. First, I'd love to introduce the panel. Now, for you people that have been watching the Paso Wine Zoom Hangouts, you know that sometimes we shake it up and we don't have local winemakers or growers or other personalities in our industry, but rather other personalities in the industry and people that I often, in my role here, get an opportunity to share some wine with and talk to about Paso and other environs all over. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to start with a couple of quick introductions. I'm going to go east to west because we do have an East Coast person. We've got somebody from Midwest, or not Midwest, but Texas actually. So Texas is its own thing, right? And then we come over to the West Coast, Sonoma and Napa. Starting with Sarah Tracy, who is awesome. She was actually just mentioning the last time she actually went on one of the press trips was actually to Paso, and it's so cool, Sarah, to see you and have you on the show. Sarah is a sommelier. She is a wine educator. She does so much in the industry, a consultant. She helps manage wine lists. She can talk so much more about what it is that she does. But she also has participated in about 400 plus different wine education classes and the like. She is absolutely sought after as a journalist as well, contributor to Martha Stewart Living, O Magazine, Food Network, Food and Wine, just to name a few. Sarah, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm coming to you from Brooklyn. So I should warn everyone if you hear car traffic, sirens, just crazy New York street noises, that is where I'm from. But it's a pleasure to be here. I love Paso. And yeah, my last great memories of before everything shut down, I was in Paso the second week of March and had an amazing time visiting all of the local wineries and hanging out with Chris, all the winemakers in Paso, and just had a fabulous time. So I love Paso and I'm with you in spirit, even though I'm in Brooklyn now.
Right on. Thanks, thanks, Sarah. Thanks so much for excuse me, joining us today. Then we also have Jeff Kralick. He's an author. He has his blog called The Drunken Cyclist. Don't let that fool you. He's not advocating for drinking and riding your bike by any means, but it is an award-winning blog. Met Jeff some years ago at the Wine Bloggers Conference that came through Paso, and we've kept in touch since. He's actually been here on a media tour or two over the last few years. Jeff, he's interesting. When you read his blog, and at the very top, it says he has 3 passions: wine, cycling, travel, family, and math. Hilarious guy. If you caught that, I hope you did. He is an educator by trade, as he is a French and math and history teacher who ended up getting into wine and leading a lot of trips across France, the most iconic of wine regions. And he is, as I said, an author. And so with his blog, as well as how he contributes to a number of other articles out there, his wine writing is just it's great, and it always has a really fun little twist to it. And so, Jeff, welcome.
Thanks, Chris. Wow, you make me sound a lot better than I have to record this and play this back for my wife so she can believe that someone out there actually thinks that. Yeah, I'm here in Houston. I moved here a few years ago, and the Houston wine scene is really an incredible place. I used to live in Philadelphia, which the wine scene there is great, but here in Houston, the food and wine scene is just really incredible. So I feel really fortunate to be down here. I host a few wine competitions as such at my house every year, which is a lot of fun. So we really love living down here in Houston these days.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks. And thanks for coming on today, Jeff. And Chris Sawyer, you are up in Petaluma, so we're now here over on the West Coast. Chris is quite the prolific sommelier. He is a very well-renowned sommelier who travels internationally, provides content for so many different publications, and is an educator as well. Chris has judged at a number of different wine competitions over the years. But one of the things that I wanted to point out about Chris, I feel like you almost don't need an introduction, not to diminish our other guests by any means, but I wanted to focus on one thing in that you are known for creating interesting wine pairings with pop culture as well as with music, and I hope we get to talk a little bit about that, but welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. Now, it's a pleasure to be on here. Last year, I judged 21 wine competitions. and the biggest one was in Europe. But I mean, I'm just used to it, so I was super honored to be on the show today and to talk a little bit about you know how excited I am about the Central Coast competition that's coming up to come down to Paso Robles, and I had to or actually taste a couple of the benchmarks for the area, which is Tabas Creek, of course, and you've got to do some of the J. Lore too, because when I think about Paso Robles, I think about those two wineries right off the top of my head because of just the legacy that they helped start too. So no, I'm super honored to be on here today, and I really love wine education, and I talk about Paso all the time, but I talk about everywhere in the world about wine because that's just what it is. You can love one area, but if you really want to become a world recognizer of wines, you have to really open up your platform. And I feel like the wine competitions give us that kind of an opportunity, especially to find new and exciting wineries, as we'll talk about in a few minutes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Chris. And I know I've heard you speak a number of times. You've even been featured on different forms of media like USA Today and MSN, NBC, and a number of other different outlets out there. Outlets that, of course, Tim McDonald is very familiar with. Tim and I share, I think, a sort of side of the industry that often speaks to the other three guests, which is PR. Tim has been in the business for about 30 years, starting off with some of the very well-known brands out there like Gallo, Peak, Chinchero, and others. He has been a part of over 100 different wine competitions, and as Chris just mentioned, with the Central Coast Wine Competition coming up here in Paso, Tim is the head judge, I believe is how it's put, or maybe there's a different title than a different way of putting it. But Tim will be coming down and organizing a very big tasting of wines from the Central Coast for the Central Coast Wine Competition. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris, and it's always a pleasure to be in your space. Yeah, the Central Coast Wine Competition's been around for a while, and I've been the head judge or chief judge, or merely the person that makes sure that the panels get assigned wines that they might like. And this year we're off a little bit. One of the questions I saw from one of our friends who's also a judge down there, it's always ranged in the neighborhood of 600 to 800, and we're just a little north of 515. And we also do spirits, and they already did the olive oil with the olive oil judges, and there will be some vinegars, Chris, so don't be checking out early on Wednesday.
Okay.
Because the vinegars are up, guys. And it's fun to do the spirits too. And I think that the judging is a really great opportunity to get together. And 2020 has been difficult in so many ways, but not being able to be with our friends and to taste wine together, especially in a blind environment, is something we all really like to do. And so I think everybody that's coming is very much looking forward to it. And I can't wait to see you down there.
So before we jump into the topic, there's something happening in California right now, wildfires, of course, and Chris up in Petaluma and Tim in Napa City. We were talking offline earlier that it's quite smoky out there. And I know we've also, all of you, I've seen a lot of your feeds in social media that you've been trying to raise some awareness as far as trying to potentially raise monies for people that are being affected by the fire. First, Chris, Tim, you guys are safe. You're cool, right? Chris, go first.
Yeah, I think we're safe just because we're both in the south parts of the counties. The fire right now is really on the Mayacamas, and it's a heavy duty fire right now. We've lost a lot of great wineries and also some amazing restaurants. I mean, Meadowwood and things like that. You know, Mike Dunn is watching, and we had such an amazing experience, and it's gone. But you know, these things will be rebuilt. It's a very hard time right now, and the smoke is very thick right now. We do not know when it's, you know, what the, you know, where we're at as far as, you know, containment. But there are a lot of people in danger right now, and we're very concerned about a lot of our friends.
And just to mirror the same sentiment, this is the worst fire we've ever had. And in addition to people losing their homes, you know, if the power is turned off at the winery, like it is if you evacuate, you know, how can you go through harvest when you don't have electricity? So it's a sad week or so, and it's only slightly contained. Luckily, I'm looking up at my flag and it doesn't seem to be blowing. So not having wind is a really good thing. And the big 747s that dump all that lovely orange retardant are in, there's definitely an Air Force doing a very noble, heroic job on both sides of the mountain. Luckily, it's in one area and not more than one. And I know up in Shasta, they have another type of fire going on too. But yeah, it's going to be a tough harvest in general. And, you know, and every day you learn of somebody who just got informed that their house isn't there. So there are ways to help. And, you know, there's many ways. I'm kind of a big fan of the Red Cross, and you can designate it to a Napa fire or Sonoma fire. I mean, you can, you know, funnel it down to an area.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that there's a lot of ways that we can help. But Sarah, I know you were posting a few things earlier on your Instagram and on Facebook. You want to share some of those resources?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. I was in Napa actually this time last year, staying in St. Helena, and got evacuated. And it's the only time I've ever left Napa early, like willingly. It was just a really scary time, and I can't even imagine what you guys are going through this year. But one of the best resources I found is the Napa Community Foundation. And they have a disaster relief fund that seems like they're really kind of tuned into what's going on in the ground and able to give resources where they're best used. So that's where I've been donating for the past few days. I know the Red Cross is also has something going on, but whenever I can find a local organization, I feel like they're really able to respond quickly and in a very nuanced, specific way for the area. So yeah, the Napa Community Foundation is where I've been investing some of my resources this week.
And we at the Alliance, you know, we've done now over the years a few different fundraisers where we've also donated what we can raised here locally from many of the wineries who choose to create this larger pot of funds. And that would also go to the same community resources foundations. And there are similar ones that exist for Sonoma as well. And so I would encourage, if you can, please help out where you can. Keep watching and seeing how things are going up there. But our neighbors to the north, they're definitely in our thoughts. I know right now, since we're part of the Protect Place Name, the Truth in Labeling international group that exists, that there's been a note running around from Rioja, from Champagne, from Bordeaux. Everybody's hearts are going out to the North Coast right now. And so, not to put a damper on our conversation, but I just wanted to, since we do have two guests that are up there and dealing with some of the worst smoke conditions that you could possibly have anywhere. And I know we dealt with it a few weeks ago as well here when we had a fire nearby, big fire nearby, that guys just stay inside and stay safe and have some good wine open, right? So let's get into the topic. We are talking about the wine competition. And what is that? The wine competition, it's a really interesting thing in that wines, which can be so subjective, I mean, do you like it, do you not like it, are actually judged, are actually scored. They actually receive medals. You probably understand how some wines, even from a scoring standpoint, are getting, you know, rated from 100 down to 85 or something like that. But today what we're wanting to talk about is this very specific thing that happens that where a group of judges come together, they don these white lab coats, and which I'm going to have a question about that as to why white lab coats. I don't understand that, but I'm sure.
We don't spill on ourselves, you know?
Because if you do, then you see it everywhere, and it's like you suddenly become wine camo. So we're going to talk about that. I want to start with Tim, though. Tim, you've put together these competitions. You're putting together one right now. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the format. Try to maybe visualize it for people that don't understand how this goes down.
Thanks, Chris. All of them have run one thing that's really similar, and that's that they are 3 or 4 person panels. None of us know much about what we're tasting other than the varietal and maybe the year. Some competitions do price classing, some do not. And you're basically tasting the wines that were entered. And in the case of Central Coast, it may be 500 to 800 wines. And in San Francisco, especially the Chronicle one, it could be as high as 7,000 wines. So you get about 100 a day. I like to start my panels with reds first and whites next, even though some might not agree. And it's all about consensus. So these wines may not have had the benefit of being scored by one of those 3 important publications. But if you don't get a score, then you need something. And whether that's to talk about your brand and your wine, or maybe you want to make a little point of sale. And whether you're in Dallas or Houston or New York or Florida or wherever, if you win a best of, that means that not only did the panel think it was a best of, but if you make it to sweepstakes, it's not just the 3 or 4 persons, it's an entire group. So when you win best white or best sparkler or best dessert or best red, the entire crew that's down there has voted that way. And I think it's better than anything that we have while we're waiting for that elusive score from whomever. Mm-hmm. And also the nice thing about it is that you're with your colleagues. That's another thing that's really cool.
I would just add in there too, I mean, I think that because of how important these competitions are now, we are tending to, most of the ones that I do, at least in Sonoma County, probably the best known is the Sunset Magazine one that we do, the Sunset International, and also North Coast Wine Challenge, which is a fantastic one, which is really kind of, like I said, very similar to the Central Coast one. But we're also giving, we're actually giving ratings for gold medals and above. So even that has started to play into the game where, you know, if we really feel like it's a very solid gold, it's probably going to get somewhere between a 90 to a 94, and 95 and above that is absolutely a double gold. So there's even become more finite about how great that wine is. And we're actually using descriptors, and you see these descriptors used on, you know, and on store shelves now, because it's really that important. I feel like what Tim said there that's really important is this is a team effort. So, you know, you've got a majority that really feels, and sometimes if it's a double gold, you've got everyone at that table that feels very strongly about that wine. And it's going to make an impact out there. I think a really good example is from Central Coast a couple of years ago, where we had the Cass wine that just won it all. I was like, oh, bam, who is this producer? And like, bam, they just became really special all of a sudden. It's like getting the, you know, the 100, you know, the top 100 in the Wine Spectator. These are like that kind of quality to these judges, that what we tasted, these are the best wines there are right now. You know, and it's in a lot of different circumstances. You know, so far this year, before the COVID shutdown basically happened, I had just judged my 5th competition of this year, and I've judged 5 since then. And it's a very different approach now. And I'm sure Tim can go a little bit more in detail about what we're really going to be doing. But we really do have to be distanced from one another. We are at tables. I think the biggest change here is usually we just pour our glasses out, and then the people come and take them away for us, the volunteers. And then all of a sudden, they're just resetting while we're just gabbing and stuff. But no, that's not what's happening now. So we taste, then we dump them out, and we put them in the racks, and we get the hell away from the table and let the people set it up for us. So there's some changes, some logistics that have changed because of this. We are getting our temperature taken before we even walk in the door. We are wearing masks as minute we get up from that table. But it's almost like one of those situations where we're at restaurants now where you can sit there without a mask because you can't eat with a mask on. But the fact is we are really spaced away from each other. So we're having to make up for these, this dilemma right now, but we're doing a good job. And I feel like there's never been a more important time than now for wine competition results, because people, you know what, you can't go to the restaurants and have all these great wines right now. So, but you can buy them. And that's the most important thing, is what do we buy? And hopefully we're really helping those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also wanted, I'm sorry, I also wanted
Go
to
ahead,
add
Jeff.
because I don't know who's watching or how much experience they have with wine competition, but Tim mentioned that at the Central Coast there's 500 to 800 wines, and at the one that I'm most familiar with, the Texas Livestock Show and Rodeo, there's about 3,000 wines. I don't taste all 3,000. So there's about 125 judges. We each taste about 100 a day. And it's usually 2 days. So my group of 3 to 4 people, well, we're the only ones tasting those wines, and so there's different groups all over. So it's not that would be really daunting to even go through 500, even if it's just 100 a day. So I just wanted to clear that up, just to make that.
It's impossible to go through that many wines. Actually, you would not be standing just by the little touch of alcohol in that many wines would not leave you standing after a while, for sure.
I'm curious on something, and I want to toss this one over to Sarah, and that is, so when you're sitting there and you're tasting wines, and let's just say you have a bunch of Petite Syrahs in front of you. What makes one Petite better than the other? What's going through, and for everybody out there, there's something called typicity that I hope Sarah might talk a little bit about. But what's going on when you're looking at these different wines in front of you?
And it's so challenging. The first time I ever judged anything, I was so out of my element because my whole background is in restaurants, and my title in front of me says sommelier, but I should probably say I am a sommelier on hiatus, or maybe with COVID, my restaurant work is just not happening right now. So, sommelier really is defined as someone that is an expert in restaurant wine service and building restaurant wine programs, and quality is just a very small part of the picture when you're putting together a wine list. There are wines that I think are incredibly high quality, but they also has to be, can I sell this wine? Can I find the uniqueness in this wine to get my servers excited about it so they can sell it? Are my guests going to like it? Is it going to support what the chef's doing in the kitchen? I'm trying to make money for my owners, so is it going to be successful with our guests? I'm thinking about all of those things in my day-to-day life when I taste, considering menu placement and judging, whether it's a wine competition. I also do a lot of work with the tasting panel for wine and spirits. So when you're judging wines in that editorial way as well, you really have to take context away, and you have to take your personal preferences away and really zero in on what are the technical merits of the wine. Things like balance, things like typicity, absolutely. Can you get that sense of terroir? Are there nuances in the wine? Is there a beautiful long finish? I mean, all these technical things that I do think when you're in the sommelier community, you're learning to blind taste. It really is about focusing in on alcohol, acidity, all of those really technical scientific markers, which is so different than how we experience wine when we're out to dinner or visiting a winery or having more of that lifestyle experience with wine. And so it was really difficult for me to take away. I teach a lot of wine classes and I teach a lot of beginners. Like at least a couple times a week, I'll do a wine 101 for a group. And a lot of what I'm focusing on is kind of trying to teach them the difference between not good and not for me. I think there's a really specific difference between the two. So there are wines that I know are technically excellent that might not be my pick if I was at the wine shop, but you have to be able to sort of remove your own personal biases, I think, about style and really try to understand, judging wines on those benchmarks. So it's tough. It's a tough thing to do.
And you brought up something that's really true, that, and there were questions from Paul had to do with typicity.
Yeah.
And the idea that, okay, I've got 40 Chardonnays, you're going to take your bias out of it, and
Yep.
which is what judges try and do, and say, hey, is this going to be a Chardonnay that works with a typical beginner or a mid-level person? And to me, it's about how great it is, and you're kind of looking for good, and then you go from good to the ones that stick out that are not only great typicity, but they just sing to you. And hopefully everybody on your panel agrees. And when you have a unanimous panel, that's 4 people, and we work with the Wine and Spirits magazine, so you know what it's like to be with other people.
Yep.
And when you find out one, this is something I want to find out what it is.
Yeah.
And then you want to find out how much it costs, and you want to find out how much is available, and all the details.
Well, and one thing that I'd love to throw out to the group, I wonder if you all had the same experience as I have, but the idea of typicity, is a wine meeting the benchmark expectations of what we consider the highest quality for that specific region? Is it hitting those different markers? I find that's gotten so difficult with climate change. Just vintage to vintage. Is that idea maybe going to be evolving and changing? I remember specifically tasting like Sancerre from 2017 and being like, wow, this is so tropical. It's not lean and mineral like I would be judging the wine as it kind of meeting that style. So I think that's an interesting idea, is if climate change is going to kind of change the way that we approach that concept.
I think it is. I think that there's definitely a climate change factor. I mean, you look at Willamette Valley, for instance. I mean, they've had some of the hottest vintages they've ever had. So that's changing up there in Willamette Valley in Oregon. I think when we go to typicity, though, I really do have a problem with typicity, because it better taste like the varietal. That's number one. Is it varietally correct? That's number one. And that's in some cases all we know. We don't know the region. So when we're judging competitions, we can't really identify, well, we're trying to identify it by the region, but that's not the specifics there. So it's kind of a little bit different. There are some competitions where we do things like that, like the Harvest Challenge, where we actually do know the appellations. And sometimes you can ask actually the appellations, and is it typical of that appellation? Okay, that's good, and we can move on. But if it doesn't taste like the varietal itself, that's getting a very, very low award right off the bat. And what are its flaws? I think that's the other main thing that we look at first off, to see, is this really stinky? Is it really super overly tannic? Are there some problems here? And will it open up in this glass as I continue to taste these 8 wines and give it a second chance and come back to it and see if it, or do we just send the bottle or send that little sample back and say, can we get it out of a different bottle? So there's a lot of fine tuning that happens there. I'm always looking for great wines. So I'm always going to give it the benefit of the doubt. If I even have a question, if it's corked or if it's flawed, I'm probably going to ask for a second pour for our table, because I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And in some cases, they've come back, they've been absolutely awful. And in some cases, they've come back, they've gotten a gold medal. So it's really important to give, you know, sometimes there's bottle variation too. So it's really fine tuning those things. And we have to do that on the fly when we're doing these competitions. It's very interesting. But as far as typicity goes, having that standard that you base it on is one thing, but really it's styles. There's all sorts of different styles of these wines. So it's really using that as your base and then moving off of that.
Well, that's what I was going to talk about, Chris, is that I have a Benito Duci Zin in my glass right now. And just within that vineyard, you can have very different styles of wine. So typicity is kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, because you can have a cool climate Zin all the way up to a really warm climate Zin that's heavily oaked. Yeah, they all taste like Zinfandel, but they're very different wines. And so my challenge is always, when Sarah's talking about her first competition, I had a couple challenges. One is, and Chris, we talked about this the other day when we were preparing for this, is judging wine to me is very different from evaluating wine. At home, I like this Zinfandel that's only been open for, you know, maybe 40 minutes has changed already so much in the glass. And so I like to taste it over the course of a day, maybe even some the next day to see how it's changed. Judging, no. You have it in front of you and you have a real quick minute or two to really make a decision on the wine. And so I really try to focus really hard on what's in the glass. And as a consumer, how would I feel if I just paid, let's say $20, if it's a $20 price range, how would I feel if I just paid $20 for this wine? There's a lot of things that go into judging that I don't necessarily think about when I'm evaluating a wine at home.
I would agree. I think that when you are in a category that's big, like a category like Chardonnay or Cabernet, etc., they're just large categories. But when they're smaller categories, I think your typicity factors in a little bit more, because we all have been in the dreaded Viognier category or something like that. That's you know, there's always one that just shines above the others, and that would be because that particular winery knew how to handle Viognier. And I'm not a fan of knowing AVAs. I think it should be as blind as you can get. I know many competitions use price classing. It's like the State Fair in California. But you judge differently if you know it's $15 and under, or if it's 25 and over. So
To your
become
point,
harder on those flights.
Yeah.
When they're more expensive.
Well, to your point, the first time I judged my first flight there were 40 Pinot Noirs, $9 and under.
Oh,
That's a sad day.
ouch.
So I thought, the first thing I thought is, what the hell did I just get involved in?
Yeah.
And
A lot of boxed wines there. Yeah.
But to find typicity in a $9 Pinot Noir, what does that mean? So
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to tell the audience we got a late start, and so even though we're already nearing 3:45, we're probably, as long as our panelists are cool with it, going to go just a little longer, since we kind of had that rough start there with mirroring over. Hey, we actually have a few questions that I'd love to throw out to you guys, because we have one person that's asking about the nose on the wine and if you're able to actually get a sense of terroir from that, and or the land, the earth, the climate, all that kind of stuff that goes into growing the wine. I don't know if anybody wants to take that one.
I will. I'm a big nose guy. Not like my schnoz is that big, but you know, I really love aromatics.
It looks smaller on Zoom, Chris. It looks smaller on Zoom.
You know, I feel like aromatics are a really good clue about, you know, they can really trigger what you're going to get out of the wine. Sometimes it changes quite a bit. We don't have that much time, though, to really let it sit, because it gets poured, it's brought out, it's there. So we really get it, and we got to go fast, because this is a speed thing too. So aromatics are a very important thing to me, and it gives me clues about what to look for once I do taste it. And it really is a stimulol kind of effect on you, because you're like, oh, wow, I'm excited about tasting this because it smells really great. Sometimes you're absolutely dead right, and sometimes you're absolutely dead wrong. And sometimes it's just balance. It's a great balance trick where the smell really is fitting for where it's going to go. But I think some of those clues that I get is like a Sauvignon Blanc that has the Muscat clone, and it always has that melon note to it. Oh, almost every single time it's got the Muscat clone of Sauvignon Blanc versus clone 1, which is just the base one. And then, you know, sometimes you can just go, so I wonder where this is grown next to the eucalyptus trees, because you can always get that terroir kind of thing from eucalyptus trees around you, and that really interesting kind of almost pepperminty eucalyptus kind of aroma too. And then you start getting into the kind of the grassy things. And, you know, sometimes I've done as many crazy things. I'm drinking out of the great Savor Central Coast glass here by Sunset International. One time I smelled a wine. It smelled exactly like deviled ham. I had not tasted deviled ham since I was probably 1978, but I was not kidding. And all these winemakers and judges came over and they smelled it and they were like, oh, you're absolutely right, Chris, that's deviled ham. And I have no idea where it came from, but you never know what you're going to get. They give you clues and they really let you explore them. If they're really unique wines, they're going to kind of pay off in what you taste there too. That's my opinion.
I wonder what pairs with deviled ham, by the way.
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I'd probably go bubbly because it's got a ton of salt in it, but let's not go there, really.
So once again, we're talking about the wine competition, and with my 4 guests here, who are all been served as judges, who have blogs, who are in the wine world in so many different ways. But right now, we're talking about the wine competition, and we had an interesting question from Mike Dunn, who's also a judge over in Sacramento. I think, Mike, you're still in Sacramento, right? But what do you guys think about organizing classes by region? I think that's an interesting question, but let's back it up to say, how are they classified, first off, and then by region and why?
I'll go first. I think that knowing an AVA is probably the wrong way to do it. Because you have to have a good representation of that AVA. And when you're doing the state fair, for example, which Mike was chief judge for many years, maybe you only got one Cucamonga Zinfandel and you got a boatload of Dry Creek. Well, what are you going to do to that poor Cucamonga one, because there's no peers? So for me, knowing as little as possible. I like vintages sorted together. I like varietals, obviously, sorted together. I don't think you need to know the varietal makeup of a rosé unless it's varietal. So to me, breaking it down even further, you'd have to have a very large competition with everybody entering, and you know, a lot of people that don't enter. I think it's a mistake that they don't enter, but that's their business. So no, I'm not for sorting it by ABAs unless you could have a representative, of each one.
So something I'm curious about, and I'm gonna toss this to all of you who oftentimes travel international, and then I know, Chris, you've actually judged a competition, I believe, in Brussels. Is that as Americans? I mean, you say we have an American palate. Of course, you're also tasting a lot of international wines, but how do you see maybe the American palate being different than the European palate? And,
well, yeah, I mean, to be really honest, there are 11 judges from us, from the United States at the Concours Mondial de Brussels. It is the second largest competition in the world. It is definitely the most intensive one. There's, about 10,000 wines, 350 judges from all different countries. I'll tell you why it's the most challenging and just crazy different. They don't tell us anything about the varietal. They don't tell us anything about the price. They don't tell us about the region. They don't tell us anything. It's red. Taste it. And so you're sitting there with my team last time was Russia, Hungary, Portugal, France, me. And so we have very different palates. There were certain things, and we really don't really discuss it. So it's really interesting. And when you find out that this whole thing was from Croatia, you're like, oh, wow, that's amazing wine from Croatia. But who would have known? So I think that you have to be able to just do it on the fly. You really don't know. And I think that, they pick the best ones. Believe me, there isn't a process of elimination. They will track you if you are completely wrong, and they put the same wine in 2 different flights and you're completely off on those. You might not be back next year. And there are things like that. I mean, and with good reason. I mean, if they're just taking crazy guesses, I think that when you really sit down and you talk with these people, that we have a lot more in common than you think. And I think that's the good point to it. But hey, the way we eat here is very different than there. I think on the 2 coasts and down in, of course, the great city of Houston, we have great fine cuisine, but and we're kind of in that European kind of, we think that way. But I think that for just everyone going and trying this, to judge with a bunch of people from different countries, it's very trying thing. So this would have been my 5th year this year. We were going to be in the Czech Republic. We were in Switzerland last year, Beijing the year before that, Spain the year before that. So it actually is a mobile competition too. So it's not in one place, it moves around the planet. And so that's why it's even more interesting, because you're in different areas and it's very, very distinctive. And it's, I was very sad this year where all the American team could not go. And it's just because we cannot fly overseas right now. And we miss them, but it's one of the greatest challenges I've ever had. And I think that we always have to taste like that. I think that really, especially for, for Sarah and for, all of us, that are writers and bloggers and everything, we have to be completely objective with what we're tasting. It doesn't matter which country it's from. Is it good? It's the first starting point, but how great is it? And what are we learning from this? And I think that if we feel like we know everything about wine, we're completely stupid, because guess what? Vintages change, regions change, winemaking styles change, everything changes. So I think that's why competitions like this are putting us to a very interesting task, and doing it on behalf of so many great consumers out there that will get to taste these wines when we give them the big scores.
Yeah, right on.
Steve Hewitt asked a
Drinking, by the
question
way.
about the Central Coast.
Oh,
There
yeah.
really is only one competition that is exclusive to Central Coast wines,
Yep.
and it'll be taking place a week from, or in 2 weeks. So there really is only one, just like there's a New York wine competition in New York where they only taste New York wines.
And we do the same thing in Santa Rosa for the Sonoma County Fair, or Sonoma Harvest Fair. We just finished that. It's a very unique one where it's only Sonoma County wines.
I wanted to jump over to Sarah, if I could, for just a second. So, Sarah, we were earlier kind of talking a little bit about the restaurant scene and all of that. And as a sommelier who develops wine lists at restaurants, how important are, say, scores and competition awards and the like to be able to place a wine at a restaurant? Like, did they come into play?
Wine directors hate them. we like to think we're the arbiters of taste, and our palate is the only one that matters when we're creating a wine list. I say that half joking because it's not something that in restaurants that I really look too much at. However, that is kind of changing a little bit with the advent of Vivino and all these smartphone apps, because it's so common when guests come in, they'll sit down at the table, the wine list will be presented, and there's always that one guy that's paging through the list, looking down, and he's cross-referencing to see what scores this wine got. So I do think that it's, of course, becoming more important for consumers. And if they're going to be checking out my wine list, I can't have any, low-scoring wines on there. But I think for me, it becomes, oh, sorry, there's a bad horn out there, Brooklyn. When I visit producers, especially in small regions. I spent some time this summer in Arizona, and I was out in Wilcox visiting some small winemakers there, and they were just, you could tell whenever they got a high score at a competition, it meant so much to them, and it really did help their sales. And I think it was Chris that was talking about that earlier, when you just understand like the impact that has on a small business that's just starting making wine and starting to see those positive scores come in. It's really crucial for them. So yeah, I would say on the restaurant side, I'm a little more agnostic when it comes to scores, but you know, I think we're all with technology and smartphones being the way they are, we have to think about that a little bit more. And then obviously, I think the goal is similar. Sommeliers, we're trying to support small wineries that we're passionate about and we love. And honestly, if that winery gets a great score and that's something the rep can tell me about when we're tasting for me to evaluate wines for my list, that wine might stand out to me and it might influence me, even if I say it won't.
Right. I saw you use a Corvin just a second ago. What
Yeah, I think I
drinking?
might be drinking the same wine as Chris. I had the J. Lore.
J-Lore,
I
I've
have
got the proprietary one, the proprietary red blend, the pure Paso.
Yeah, do you have the 18?
Yep, the 18. So it's brand new, you guys. So I'm going to drink all this over the next day. So that's
Yes.
why I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
using a Corvin. And it's tasting extremely good by not
Delicious.
using the Corvin. But, you know, the fact is, I believe exactly what Sarah said too. I mean, that's a really good term you used, and that is agnostic. Because you really have to look at this and the philosophy behind a lot of these things and why you put them on your list. You know, I'm part owner of a great restaurant in Sebastopol, and today we're not going to be open, I'll tell you that, because of the smoke, but we have 37 tables outside, so we are open, definitely. But you know, for a lot of the competition, the big winners at the competition, I tend to run them by the glass. I'm very excited about these wines, and I know that my peers, Mike Dunn was just at a great dinner that we did the other night. And you know, we get excited about these kinds of wines, and if I can offer them to people and tell a story behind how it got that award, it makes a big difference to me. And I think in some ways I brought this up earlier about using the number scale for the competition is a little bit different than using a number scale for one individual palate who gives it that score. Because the competition is, there's a bunch of people that like that wine a lot versus one person. And that person might not have the same palate as you, but chances are 3 to 4 people are probably going to be closer to you than you think. And I think that these things really help. I think that's what it really comes down to. Great wines are all about balance. And do they go with food? Do they not go with food? If they're big tannic monsters, I mean, they might be great and they've got great potential, but putting them on the table right now, not going to really do that much for us. So I feel like you really have to choose which ones you really want to do run on your wine list. But I do feel that there's some that have really made a big impact on me and really have enjoyed really running them by the glass right after they get those big scores. And they do really help with some really great retailers, especially down in the Paso area and up here in Sonoma County, Napa Valley. These things they fly off the shelves when they get great scores.
Yeah.
I wanted to follow up to something with that Sarah said, and I also wanted to ask the rest of the panel what they thought about this. Sarah said that for a lot of these wineries, particularly the small wineries, these competitions are a big deal, and I agree with that completely. And so when I'm tasting wines, I struggle with that because that's in the back of my head saying, okay, so I've spent many a moment saying, okay, is this silver or is this gold, right? When you're on the cusp, and I've been in panels where there's that one judge who gives all those a gold. And I've been on those panels when there's that judge that gives none of those a gold. So as an educator, you know, handing out A's and grade inflation. And so how do you, Tim, specifically, when you see that someone's either giving all golds or giving no golds, do you have a conversation with them? What do you do as a head judge when you see that they're viewed one way or the other?
There's a couple of things that happen. One, you do have a conversation with them. I won't name any names because that would be unfair. But there have been times that you go over to a table and you say, dude, this isn't about the best Petite Sirah you ever had in your life. This is just about the 40 you have today. Now lighten the hell up and go with the other folks, because there's 500,000 brands out there. Only 500 showed up at this judging. So take your ego and your biases and check them at the door, or I'm not inviting you back ever again.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say too with winemakers, sometimes when you get winemakers on the panels, there's great winemaker judges and they actually taste like a consumer. But when there's a terrible flaw in the wine and you can't figure out what it is, they'll tell you exactly what it is. But the fact is, a bad winemaker judge is one that looks for flaws in everything and says, I would never have made that wine. Who cares? That's not your wine, you know? And so you really do get in some difficult situations with these things. And I've had those same people. I remember one, I won't say who it is, but everything he would say was bronze, bronze, bronze. And that was it. There was just, everything was bronze. And you're like, oh, man, we're giving 2 golds over here and it's still bronze. And so these people do need talks too. And back, I think that Sunset Magazine was the first one where we saw a lot of people judge once and never judge again. It's because that was setting the new bar for quality judges right there. And there's a lot of prestigious people that just, they might be great with what they do, but they're not really great wine judges. So
Like when you're judging cherry pie. You're at a fair, there's 27 cherry pies. None of them are bronzes.
no.
I mean, they're all just good cherry pie. You pick the one you like the most. And to me, that's the rule. If you don't get the program, that you're looking for the best that you have here today. You're not thinking in your mind when you had that beautiful Montrachet and it was like heaven on earth, and no, there ain't gonna be no Montrachet in here, okay, guys? There's gonna be some Chardonnay.
Yeah, that is a tricky one too, and there are some sommeliers that have been like that. And I will say that, like, you just have to judge it for what it is. You have to know everything. I think that's why judging, and I mean, I've been judging for 25 years, and the fact is, I'm just so used to it. It doesn't matter who you put on my panel. I'm going to give them my 2 cents worth. And if I really, really love a wine, I'm going to write a lot of notes about it, because I am going to all of a sudden become a lawyer, and I'm going to argue this case that this is a gold medal wine, and I want you guys to acknowledge this right now.
So how much table talk? How much table talk is there at some point in time then?
There's pretty good amount of table talk, believe it or not. What would you say, Tim?
Yeah, no, in America, we like to have a consensus.
Yeah.
And I get really annoyed because, oh, well, we got Ricazzatelli. It's a New York unique wine. I believe it's only one producer that makes it. And we got a Ricazzatelli here, and I give it a gold. And I had 2 winemakers, remain unnamed, and an educator. Nothing, nothing, and nothing. And I said, guys, it's Ricazzatelli.
Yeah.
Have you ever had it? And they go, no. I said, well, maybe you ought to recuse yourself for a moment, or go sit in the corner, count up 50, and then come back. It's Ricazzatelli. It tastes like celery, for crying out loud. And you know what? The Ricazzatelli producer I'm talking about sells out of that Ricazzatelli in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
So to go to that question, Chris, I've been on panels where we discuss ad nauseum almost every wine, and then I've been on panels where you get one judge that will just say, I gave all of them a gold except for number 7 and number 8, something like that. And so you want to tease out a little bit, you know, I mean, part of the fun for me is what Chris Sawyer alluded to was, you know, going to bat for that wine that you really, really love, right? How on earth can you get that a bronze? What the hell is the matter with you? I mean, I would go out
And
and buy
you can get them,
right now
if you work well with your team, you can get them up. I mean, you really can. They will listen to you, but it's great teams, putting together great teams. There's been, I mean, I think that probably one of my problems with typicity is because I did judge with someone that was all based on typicity. And it bugged me so much that, I mean, she just wouldn't listen. And that was the thing, is that, like, you have to think outside the box and you have to listen to others. And I think that every one of these competitions that I judge, I mean, I learn things every time. I mean, why would I not? And it's not about just, you know, what we think these wines are going to be. Maybe they're going to impress us more than we ever thought. And going back to Tim, to some of these competitions where San Francisco International, which is the biggest in the United States, it can be up to 10,000 at certain points. But you're tasting some weird stuff from the middle of the United States. You don't really know that much about it. But, you know, sometimes you have to run to the other room and ask the guy that is the professor from that from that area of Indiana a little bit about it, and run back and actually use your resources there to understand it instead of giving up on that wine.
Yeah, you know, and you get Americans, you get hybrids, you're tasting Diamond, Niagara, Marichal Foch, you're tasting all these interesting varietals that we Californians just never see unless we're judges. And I'm always thinking, oh, yeah, it's a little sweet, maybe. But if there's acidity there, or when you're judging meads, or you're judging, you know, flavored freaking vodka, I mean, it's just, you have to come up with a good answer and give them the benefit of the doubt. I mean, you know, I love doing spirits too. So I've been spirits judging for 20 years. And, you know, if it tastes like mango and jalapeno, and it says mango and jalapeno on the label, I'm good with a silver. I wouldn't drink it personally.
Yeah. Well,
but I don't have a bias against it.
That was my problem my first year here in the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. I was honored, is the way that they put it, on the extra panel to do. First, I had to stay later, which, you know, after 8 hours, 10 hours the first day and close to 10 hours the second day, they say, oh, you get to stay a little longer and taste some more. Woo! And it was the Texas wine competition. And that was it. It was Texas wine, because that's big in Houston. It's big. Texans love everything that is made in Texas. And so it was just Texas wines: white, red, fruit, sweet, sparkling. And so then how do you get a best in category when it's everything from a super dry sparkling to a really sweet blueberry wine? That was the most challenging for me.
Wow.
Yeah, fruit wines are a bit of a difficult, I will say.
Would you be biased? Would you be biased towards vinifera over fruit wines, or do you think, or?
I'd like to have an open mind, just open mind. We're tasting blackberry wine, we're tasting strawberry wine, we're tasting peach wine, which doesn't really make very good wine usually. And, you know, we're tasting fruit wines. No, we don't judge these the way we would judge a Cab or a Chardonnay, but, you know, are they something that you think is balanced?
Are they unique, and are they balanced? That is the key word here. Yeah. I mean, when I'm doing this European one that I have no idea, I probably can't pronounce this varietal because it's so rare and it's from such a weird area of this one country, but yet it's pretty good, and I want it, and I'm interested in it, and it gets a decent award from me, of course. I mean, you have to open up your palate, you have to open up your mind, and you have to be thinking on the fly, but it is a very unique thing to be able to taste these really crazy wild wines that you just never thought you'd ever be tasting, but they can be very, very good as well.
Cool. So once again, we're talking about the wine competition, just in case you just joined us or tuned in over there on Facebook land. But we are going a little long today because we did have a bit of a rough start. So just reiterating that one. I want to toss it over. I want to change gears, switch gears just a little bit before I'm going to go and do a quick round robin and wrap things up. Kralik, you do something really fun and interesting with other writers that are in Texas, which is you actually put together some of your own wine competitions. And I want you to talk a little bit about that. But before you do that, we had a question earlier. You're drinking a Ducey, Benito Ducey, but can you tell us what you're drinking and show a label or something like that?
Yeah, it's Piedra Creek. So it's a winery it's actually in San Luis Obispo. I did an article for Zap not too long ago about the great vineyards or legendary vineyards in Paso Robles. And so when I saw this pop up, I actually paid for this wine, which I don't know. Can anybody that's drinking right there, did you actually pay for the wine that you're actually drinking?
I did.
I did for the Tablas Creek for sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
I don't pay for wine.
Bought some J. Lord.
Sarah,
I don't pay for wine. No, just kidding. I
you
do
know,
some.
someday when I can travel again, I'm totally going to Sarah's.
Absolutely.
So about the competition, so I don't know why I started doing this when I moved to Texas, and one of my passions is what I call, and I took umbrage of what Tim said earlier about rosé. It doesn't matter the variety or how it's made, and I think it does.
I know about your legendary rosé smackdown. This is famous all over the wine
Wow. Well,
wine Facebook, wine Instagram. We all know about this.
You should come out.
I still won in on that one.
Yeah.
Sawyer, you're always invited, buddy. So I call them true rosés, which are intentionally made rosés, not a saignée. I call it true rosé because I was frustrated that there's a word for the not real rosé, which is called saignée. But there's not really a word for it. Some people call intentional, some people call them bespoke rosés, which I think is a little bit of a stretch. But I just decided one year, the year I moved here, to get a bunch of samples and invite some of the writers in Houston to come over to our house. And we sit here for about 4 or 5 hours. And 1 year we had, most rosés we've had about 80. I also do a Pinot Noir tasting in the fall, which I'm starting to gather samples for now. Last year we had 100. We split that over 2 days. And then I do a sparkling wine tasting right before, an American sparkling wine tasting right before the holidays. So it's just a little bit of fun, get some of the people in Houston together and the geeks like me, and it's a good time. But it's a lot of work. I mean, one of the things we haven't really talked about is how difficult wine tasting is. And people who don't do it say, oh yeah, real rough job. Well, you can't really respond to that person, but people who know it. The first year I did the rosé tasting, I figured I wasn't gonna have time to take really concise notes. So I tasted them all beforehand, wrote notes, and then tasted them again. So I did like 80 some rosés in a couple hours. My teeth literally hurt for a week with all that acid. It was painful. I was worried that I just did something really stupid and I was going to lose my teeth.
Yeah.
So.
One thing I do want to say too, how do we not get drunk? This is another question that I do get often. If we're tasting 100 wines during the day, how do you do it? I mean, are you just amazing? Was this from your high school days when you did pony kegs and chugged beers all the time, or what was it for? No, it's actually, we are professional spitters, and it's actually even more detailed than that. You really have to drink a lot of water and eat very bland food often. And that's the whole thing. That's the trick, and those are very crucial things. I have seen people that come in and they think they're hot stuff, and they don't know the tricks, and they do not drink anything, or they drink no water, and they drink all the wine, and they are not back from lunchtime. They are not. It just doesn't work that way. It's really how we judge wines, and it's how we actually taste wines professionally is actually spitting. I mean, Sarah can tell you the same thing. When people come in to sell us wine, we are not sitting there drinking it. There are some exceptions, very small exceptions, but we are actually spitting those wines and waiting for the next person. So it's kind of the same way of doing it here, where you've just got to be a professional spitter. In fact, the San Francisco Chronicle, where we taste 125 to 130 a day for 3 straight days, and then we do the sweepstakes. Going back to Jeff's comment, my just mouth hurts. My muscles in my mouth hurt from spitting basically 3 times for each wine. So that's like, thousands of spits that I've made. I've puh, puh, puh. It's not the easiest task doing that either. So, I mean, it's wonderful when you find those wonderful wines. And believe me, the dinners and everything afterwards, and just good times with your fellow judges afterwards, it's worth it. But it's a lot of work. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to say, I was just going to say, my very first job in wine ever, I was the person that emptied all the spit buckets and had to clean them. First job in wine ever. And I'm still standing in here to tell the tale like 10 years later. But,
Wow.
it's important.
Worst job ever.
Worst job ever. But I can actually say I started from the bottom.
I'll tell you what,
my way up to being here with you all today.
We have our annual wine festival every year, not this year, in May in our downtown square park. And,
Love that.
Of course, the Wine Alliance who puts that on. And we have a volunteer crew, and I just could not ever ask a volunteer ever to do that job. And I'll be honest, and I'm not being weird about it, but I take that job on every year. Honestly, dumping all of these big 5-gallon dump buckets worth of waste wine because it is just such a disgusting job. And so, Anya, hey, let's talk really quick because we're going to start wrapping things up here. We've got a couple questions. One is an interesting one, which is, do you have a favorite wine competition? Besides the Central Coast Wine Competition, of course.
Well, the Central Coast is number 1, of course.
Central Coast is number 1, Chris. Come on.
No doubt. Well, for me, it would be my European one. I mean, the Concours Mondial de Brussels is really amazing. The ones we do here in Sonoma County are really interesting. They're just all so different. But I love coming down there. So I could never say I have a favorite.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that. My favorite wine competitions tend to be where the people who are judges and the volunteers and staff are really great people. And so I don't go there because I need to taste another couple 100 wines. I go there because I like seeing you, Sawyer. Yeah. I like seeing Chris. I like seeing people that maybe you haven't seen in a year.
People that you can learn from and hanging out and just really having some really great times that will build your relationship for the rest of your life. I mean, I feel like there's so many benefits to doing this, and absolutely with Tim there on that. I mean, San Francisco International is probably one of, if I was to pick one from the United States, I would probably say San Francisco International and Central Coast. Sunsets.
But it's because the judges are people that you enjoy hanging out with.
They're the real deal. Absolutely.
Well, that's why we're going to get Sarah out here soon, huh?
Yeah, I was going to say.
And Jeff, how come you've never, you need to be out in California once in a while.
You need him here more often. Wait till we debut our new show. This is going to be crazy. Wait till you hear what Jeff and I are about ready to do. Shh.
Secret. That's a teaser.
Sarah, go.
I was saying my favorite is the Central Coast. I haven't been yet, but Tim's promised to get me in next year. So
that's the right answer.
Well, June you'll be there. The other thing that I like to do, and Chris could vouch for it, is that I like the judge panel to be kind of half women, half men.
Like
Absolutely.
that.
In San Francisco, when I took it over, I did eliminate some judges that have been doing it for a long time, not for any other reason than to find seats for really important buyers, restaurant people. And if they happen to be female, it was a bonus. So I like having a diverse group of people. If you're going to have 25 judges, please, 12 of them have to be women.
I think it's important to say that judges are not always, by the way, I mean, my audience is made up of writers, bloggers, educators, and the like, but there's also people that are wine buyers, maybe for larger kind of groups, say like a Bevmo or something like that, and and then or an Albertsons or whatever it might be, and then as well as other types of people in the industry, winemakers, people within actual brands and the like. But remember, they're tasting blind, and so it's not exactly like they know exactly that wine that's right in front of them that might be their own or something like that. Hey, Kralik, you were just about to say something.
Yeah, it's gotten a little washed out, but I don't have as much experience as the other people on this panel. But I put my plug in for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo because it's such a great organization. If you've never been to the rodeo in Houston, you have to come. Except with the exception of this last year. I mean, it was right. COVID, the lockdown happened right at the beginning of March. With the entire month of March is the rodeo here in Houston. And we judge well before the judging is done in around Thanksgiving, but they have wine gardens set up. There's and there's a rodeo every night followed by a concert, and there's all the kids who benefit from it. It's really great organization, and they really do a lot for the education scholarships for kids in all over Texas. So it's a really special thing. It's kind of cool to go to the event and hang out in the wine garden and say, hey, I judge these wines. I mean, no one cares. They look, I mean, they're all just they're getting hammered. But it's fun. So that is definitely the reason I really like, and I keep doing the rodeo show.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to at some point in time you coming out here. I know that for the Houston, specifically rodeo one a couple of years ago, J-Lore won, I think, like winery, got a great saddle, and all of this great stuff happened, and it was a really, it's very important. It's a very important actual competition that exists out there in the greater wine world, that if you're scoring well there, or if you're making that prestigious Best Winery award, that's a feather in your cap for certain.
Let me say one thing in keeping with that too, and our West Coast version of that would be the Toast of the Coast in San Diego. And to be really honest, Tim and I judge this. It's not just like wines, but also spirits. And Robert Whitley and I just judged the spirits with Tracy Dutton for this one, and Tim was actually judging spirits too, so we weren't judging the wines. But listen to this, why it's so great. It's in Del Mar Downs. I mean, it's like at the racetrack right there that Bing Crosby built, and the fact is, the big winners there, they buy those wines from the wineries and sell them there. I mean, like, who does that? I mean, really, seriously, who buys you won #1 red? We're going to buy a pallet of your wine right now.
Yeah,
Wow.
the LA County Fair does the same thing. I think I sold, not me personally, the best Pinot Grigio in a price class sold an entire pallet during the course of the fair with consumers.
People love it.
People love it. California State Fair, you got a retailer involved, just like rodeo. If you get a best of in Houston and you're not in Specs, almost overnight, you're in every Specs store.
No doubt. It's that big of an impact. And I think that Houston is really a big deal. And it's really great. That's why having Jeff on this show is like awesome. And having Sarah on this show because of the New York competitions and the East Coast in general. These are competitions that make a big impact on so many people, even if it's at fairgrounds and high-class fairground, like little tickets that you buy to get in there, or it's on store shelves or wherever you're at. The impact of these competitions is serious.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, okay, we have time for one last question, which I promised Steve Hewitt over in Columbus, Ohio, that we would get to this, which is, and if you guys are willing, unsung winery of Paso. So switching gears from competitions and the like, but just there's got to be a small unsung winery and I'm going to actually kind of start this only because I didn't share what I was drinking, and so I'm not necessarily saying unsung, but I wanted to at least share what I was drinking while you guys think about what your answer is going to be. But last year, apparently, this from Seashell Cellars, say that 3 times fast, the 2016 Reserve Syrah got a gold medal. So that was something that Tim, you were a part of last year. I don't know if you're going to remember this wine or not, but I'll just tell you what, it was a fantastic wine. I know that it's made by, I think I can say this, Jeff Streakus from Onyx, that they over there are helping the folks over at Seashell make these wines, and it's delicious. It's a great Syrah. It's soft. It doesn't have a whole lot of like necessarily jamminess or big fruit type of flavors by any means for 2016, because I know that was a little bit of a warm year here in Paso, but it is soft, it is round, has a little bit of that pepper spice, that black pepper spice. I'm totally enjoying this wine. I'm totally going to finish this wine tonight, actually, I swear. But let's kick it to the rest of the panel here to talk maybe as our last round robin, what's unsung in Paso?
I just kind of be a bigger grouping kind of thing. I'm just impressed by Paso every time I come down. So there's always a lot of small new producers that are popping up. I think what I've really learned, I mean, and going back to that wine you were just talking about, Chris, I mean, what they're doing with the Rhone varietals there and the Hospice de Rhone, let's give a shout out to those guys.
Yeah.
Those guys have remodeled our education on what the Rhone varietals are by what Paso Robles has done in the Hospice de Rhone program. And I think that so many people have focused on that there are so many great small wineries as well as big wineries. I mean, hey, Topless Creek and what they did down there and all these wonderful things. I mean, you can't stop but say Justin and bring them up and Halter Ranch. I mean, Halter Ranch is a great one. They're a little bit bigger, but then you find all these small ones like that cast that we were talking about that blew me away a few years ago. I was like, oh, who are these people? Why did they just win this? And why are they just making everything they got was gold? I mean, it's just, and I think that's why following the Central Coast competition is a good way of kind of finding those little secrets out there.
Yeah, definitely. Go, and if you can, Google Central Coast Wine Competition. You'll find the 2019 results. That's how I found that. It's a long list of wineries, but you mentioning Cass, they had a lot of awards, and I think they got Best Winery that year, potentially, possibly.
They did.
They won more medals for their
It's
17
crazy.
entries than anybody was even close.
And these are different panels. I mean, everyone loved them. I mean, this is crazy talk.
Yeah.
So I would say Cass, I knew they were good, but I didn't know they were that good.
Yeah.
Right on. Sarah, you were going to say
And
something.
another one another one that I thought was really good is Opolo.
Yeah.
You know,
Solid.
kind of came out of
Solid.
nowhere. But you know, when you think about, you know, it's whoever wins the most medals, kind of like the Olympics. There's always a gymnast, there's always a skier, there's always somebody who just kills it.
Yeah.
And for me, the surprise was Cass was so far above number 2, number 3, and number 4.
Crazy.
That's awesome. Sarah, let's get to you, and then Jeff, and then we're going to actually wrap things up. So
Yes, so I just want to let Steve know that I'm still laughing. I saw your comment in the chat about size queens, and I never knew that relating to wine, and it's amazing. So I'm definitely going to be judiciously using that phrase in proper company. That's so great. The last time I was in Paso, and one thing I actually will say about Paso is every time I go or experience some wines, I have a new favorite. There's always something new and emerging that's really special there. The winery that I loved the most last time I was there was probably Turtle Rock Vineyards.
Yeah.
Their wines are fantastic. So definitely check those out. Turtle Rock, amazing, beautiful wines. I keep going back to them. I've written about them a ton since I was there, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
awesome. Kralik.
Yeah, so I want to touch on what Tim said. Opolo, I think I mentioned this to you when I was out there last, that we went there and I really wanted to dislike the wines. You know, they're big, they're flashy, they're kind of goofy. There's a lot of people sitting around eating pizza, but the wines are really good. I was like, you know, this isn't small producer, but their wines are really good. The second one was Four Lanterns. I was really impressed with them.
Yeah.
They have a beautiful spot. We went up on the hill and drank some wines in the vineyard. And then the last one I have to give a shout out to is my buddy, well, not my buddy, but I'd like him to be my buddy, Terry Hogue, former Philadelphia Eagle. So
Yeah.
give a shout out to the Eagles. Little pricey, but really, really, really nice wines.
Awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Mike Dunn asked a question about what variety. I want to take that one that might be up and coming for Paso. You know, lately what we've seen is that there's 50% of what's grown here is Cabernet Sauvignon. But some of the varieties, though, that are really up and coming, I mean, we've been talking, this panel's been talking about the Rhone varieties. Grenache is doing really well here. We're seeing a lot more Grenache being planted all over Paso. I personally love it. I've made some myself. I dig it. And I think that that's actually going to be something that is to definitely look out for as maybe more and more varietal wines come out, that they might be Grenache based or Grenache dominant anyway. And then looking at some of the Spanish varieties coming out of Paso also is Tempranillo. Man, oh man, we're finding and we're seeing a lot more brands coming out with Tempranillo. We're seeing a little bit more of that being planted as well. We're hearing about that. And then the Italian varieties. When you're looking at, I've been starting to see like Nero de Avola and a lot more Sangio and Aglianico being produced in the area, and they are just doing really well. It's warm here, but it cools off at night, and it is that Mediterranean climate, and so I just wanted to address that one real quick. All right, you guys, I've kept you on for way too long. We've been hanging out, having fun. I love it, and I appreciate you being on with me. Tim McDonald over there in Napa. We've got Chris Sawyer over in Petaluma, California. Jeff Kralik over in Houston. Sarah Tracy in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
So much for being a part of
Go
it.
Yankees.
No, Red Sox. Red Sox. The White Sox are doing pretty good right now, and they're usually my default. But Red Sox. Anyway, cheers, you guys.
Chris, how do you keep those fish so still in the background? They haven't moved the entire time. They're well trained.
Yeah.
So the next show next week. It's going to be all about the label and what goes into actually creating that packaging behind the label. Following that, I'm working on an Ask the Sommelier show, and then we're probably going to take a quick little hiatus of a couple of weeks because we're in harvest, and it's hard getting winemakers to get on right now. They all say no, even though in the afternoons they're probably sitting around drinking coffee or beer, right? Kidding. But it has been a little bit of a challenge, and so we might take a little hiatus. Go to pasowine.com to the Zoom Hangouts to see what's coming up next. All of you, I really appreciate you hanging on with me for a little longer of a session, and thank you so much to our audience for being a part of it and hanging out with us today. So cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
Right on.
Cheers.
Bye.
Don't forget to send me your information, Sarah.
I'm on it, Tim. You got
Me
it.
too. Me too, Sarah.
All right, guys, let's all connect after this.
Stay
For
well.
sure.
Absolutely.